From Slavery, autobiography by Booker T. Washington. In this video, I'm going to be summarizing the book and its contents and answering some questions about the book. Okay, here's a brief summary. In Up From Slavery, Booker T. Washington narrates his life after the Emancipation Proclamation frees his entire family. The book chronicles his gradual ascent from slavery, the challenges and hardships he overcame to attend the Hampton Institute, his work founding vocational schools, which is skill-based schools, most famously the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, and his efforts to assist Black people and other disadvantaged minorities, such as Indians, in learning practical, marketable skills so that they can work to uplift themselves as a race up by their bootstraps. Up From Slavery also serves as a call to action for African Americans to rise above their circumstances and pursue greater goals. So, as y'all know, when the slaves were set free, there wasn't really a whole lot for them to do because they're free, but no one wants to incorporate them into the economy because all of the slaves were being replaced with white workers, and they didn't have the means to procure an education. They didn't have the means to enter any workforces, so most of them ended up resorting to sharecropping in basically the same conditions as they had before. So this is Booker T really narrating how he rose above all of those challenges and rose above all of those road stops and got his education and really made a way for himself in the white man's world. Okay, now that the brief summary has been concluded, I'm going to answer question number 1. Question number 1. What factors worked against him, his family, and his neighbors in achieving an education? So, as y'all know, racism played a huge factor, especially in southern states, and even some northern states, because there just really wasn't any willingness to allow Black people to have any other function than as slaves. So Booker T doesn't really go into detail about anyone else's struggles in getting an education. He says it vaguely, but in relation to his own situation. So one of the factors that worked against him and his family and his neighbors in achieving an education was job responsibilities. Many Negroes had to choose between an education and work. They couldn't go to school because they had to work at various jobs just to support themselves. So school was available, but they couldn't go because they had to earn a wage to live. So one of the quotes from the book says, "The time that I was permitted to attend school during the day was short, and my attendance was irregular. It was not long before I had to stop attending day school altogether and devote all of my time again to work. I resorted to the night school again." So if he talks about night school, he was able to go to night school and he learned a lot from night school, but not as much as he might have been able to learn in a established institution. Although he does say he believed that he learned more than the children in the day school in his night school. So another quote says, "The schoolhouse was some distance from the furnace. He worked at a salt furnace. And as I had to work till 9 o'clock, the school opened at 9, I found myself in a difficulty. School would always be begun before I reached it, and sometimes my class had recited." So he found himself falling behind and found himself not being able to understand and not being able to grasp as much as the other children because he would arrive late due to the work hours of his job, because he still had to work to provide for his family and he still wanted his education. Another factor working against Black people in getting an education was a lack of qualified teachers. Most Black people weren't able to find teachers who are not only willing to teach them, but have the education to teach them. Because in order to be a teacher, you need to be a master of your trade. You need to know what you're talking about so you can explain it to people. So in one quote from his book says, I had a difficulty often in securing a satisfactory teacher. Sometimes after I had secured someone to teach me at night, I would find, much to my disappointment, that the teacher knew but little more than I did. So as you can see, they were in a bind because they couldn't find a teacher who could teach them the things that they wanted to learn because the teacher didn't know any better than they did. So you're trying to learn that alphabet and the teacher only knows it up to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you know A, B, C, D, E, F. So all they could teach you is G, so it's not much use. Another quote says, in the midst of the discussion about a teacher, another young colored man from Ohio, seems like Ohio had a lot of educated colored people for some reason, who had been a soldier, in some way found his way into town. It was soon learned that he possessed a considerable education, and he was engaged by the colored people to teach their first school. As yet, no free schools had been started for colored people in that section. Wait. Oh, I said it right. Okay. Hence, each family agreed to pay a certain amount per month with the understanding that the teacher was to board round. That is, spend a day with each family. This was not bad for the teacher, for each family tried to provide the very best on the day the teacher was to be its guest. I recall that I looked forward with an anxious appetite to the teacher's day at our little cabin. So there were people who just came to town by chance and stumbled upon this uneducated mass of people. And there were some instances where they were able to get a hold of these people and convince them to teach them. But once again, that's not the same for every town. So they were very fortunate that they had not one but two of these educated Black men stumble into their town. Forgive me, it says question number 1, but it's question number 2. What values did Washington learn while performing work for Miss Ruffner? Comment on them. Okay, so if you don't know, Mrs. Ruffner is the wife of General Ruffner, and because of slavery, she has no slaves and stuff like that. So she needs help taking care of that house. And she's very strict and she has a lot of expectations from her servants. And most of the servants that she had acquired had all left because of her expectations of them. So because Booker T was looking to earn some more money so that he can make his way to the Hampton Institute that he had heard about while he was at I think the coal mine or the salt furnace. I don't remember. I think it was the coal mine. While he was at the coal mine and he was trying to pay his way, but his job obviously was not paying him enough for him to make an adequate amount of money. So he decided to look into servanthood, and his mother secured that position for him. So what values did he learn while he was working for her? During his 1.5 years, this is an estimate by Booker T, with Miss Ruffner, Washington gained an appreciation for discipline, cleanliness, and responsibility. Washington frequently recalled the virtues he had learned from Mrs. Ruffner, and those lessons continued to benefit him in the future. He even said that the teachings he obtained were as valuable to him as any education that he had ever received anywhere since. So he really held them close to heart, and he even regarded Miss Ruffner as one of his first best friends because of what she taught him while he was in her care. This is me going into detail about the things that he learned and the quotes and stuff. In In regards to order, he says, I had not lived with her many weeks. However, before I began to understand her, I had not lived with her many weeks. However, before I began to understand her, I soon began to learn that, first of all, she wanted everything kept clean about her, that she wanted things done promptly and systematically, and that at the bottom of everything, she wanted absolute honesty and frankness. Nothing must be sloven or shipshod. Every door, every fence must be kept in repair. So she liked things orderly around her. She wanted things swept. No picture frames are crooked, nothing. And that actually benefited him later in his life. Cleanliness. This is an example of her values sticking with him in his adulthood. Even to this day, I never see bits of paper scattered around a house or in the street that I do not want to pick them up at once. I never see a filthy yard that I do not want to clean, a paling off of a fence that I do not want to put it on, an unpainted or unwhitewashed house that I do not want to paint or whitewash, or a button off one's clothes, or a grease spot on them, or on a floor that I do not want to call attention to. Because of her constant hounding about the cleanliness of her house, it really made an impression upon Washington's young mind about the importance of cleanliness and about the importance of keeping things clean, because his wages depended on the cleanliness of her house. And also accountability. This is the previous quote, but I had to have something. He had to be accountable. He could not lie, because she said she wanted absolute honesty and frankness. So if you broke something on accident, she wants to know about it. Just don't let it go missing. All of these principles stuck with Booker and have since shaped the way that he thinks and acts. Question number 3. What qualities of character enabled him to pass the test to be admitted to the Institute, even though he had no money? So the Hampton Institute, admitted to the Hampton Institute, if that wasn't clear. After he had worked for Miss Ruffner for his 1.5 years, he had finally made a meager amount of money, but enough money to cover his travel expenses to get at least near Hampton. And so he retired from his job and he made his way onto a carriage to be conveyed to a nearby town to Hampton, where he could be conveyed to another nearby town to Hampton, and finally walk the rest of the distance to Hampton. And the journey was tough. And he finally got to the Hampton Institute, and he was very, very dirty. He was musty, grimy, dirty, hungry, because he had been sleeping on the ground and never bathing. And so when he walked into this esteemed institute, he was not seen with much respect because of the state of his clothes and the state of his dress. He wasn't dressed to impress. He wasn't dressing for the job that he wanted to have, even though this was out of his control. So, to answer the question, using some of the principles and techniques that Miss Ruffner had instilled in him, he was able to finish the assignment in an exemplary way. So I did this slide kind of wrong, so I'm not giving the context of it. So when he got to the Hampton Institute, the head teacher was very put off by his appearance, and she was going to turn him away. So in order to prove himself and prove that he deserved to be here, which is kind of unreasonable on her part, but I understand. And in order for him to prove himself, she asked him to clean the recitation room. She asked him to sweep it, and he went the extra mile and cleaned the entirety of the room, the woodwork, the everything. And let me just read the rest of this. He was able to finish the assignment in an exemplary way, winning the respect of the head teacher and entrance into the school with a janitor position to place the fee. So he was so good that she even gave him the janitor position to place I'm sorry, not place the fee, to to pay the fee. That's what I meant to put. To pay the fee. So he was so good. She was like, "You need to be the janitor." His schooling was made possible by his determination and diligence. He says, and I quote, "I knew that I could sweep, for Miss Ruffner had thoroughly taught me how to do that when I lived with her. I swept the recitation room 3 times, then I got a dusting cloth and I dusted it 4 times. All the woodwork around the walls, every bench, table, and desk, I went over 4 times with my dusting cloth. Besides, every piece of furniture had been moved, and every closet and corner in the room had been thoroughly cleaned. I had the feeling that in a large measure my future depended upon the impression I made upon the teacher in the cleaning of that room." And boy, was he right. After he got his education at the Hampton Institute, it only opened up more and more opportunities for him to come up, up from slavery, for him to come up. And in much of the recognition that he got and much of the opportunities that he got opened up because of his attendance at the Hampton Institute and his education. So we know just how important education was to the Black race if you wanted to elevate from your current position in life. So that's why Booker T. Washington published this book in the first place, to tell in detail how he went from a slave child to an enterpriser, to a schoolmaster, to a public speaker, to an advocate. And he was just trying to inspire more of his people to stand up and realize that they don't have to stay where they are. They don't have to accept what society has decided to place their value in. They don't have to accept that their only place is at the bottom of the shoes of the quote unquote superior race, the quote unquote favored race. So that's what he was really trying to nail in with these stories, with his story. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was I hope it was helpful. Peace.